But very soon something different results, namely, an increased impatience, an increased resistance, a new longing for entire music, for melody. How is it with the art of Richard Wagner as seen from this standpoint? Is it perhaps the same? Perhaps otherwise? It would often seem to me as if one needed to have learned by heart both the words and the music of his creations before the performances. For without that, so it seemed to me, one may hear neither the words nor even the music. 81. Grecian taste. What is beautiful in it? Asked a certain geometrician after a performance of the Iphigenia. There is nothing proved in it. Could the Greeks have been so far from this taste? In Sophocles, at least, quote, everything is proved, unquote. 82. Esprit un-Grecian. The Greeks were exceedingly loyal and plain in all their thinking. They did not get tired of it, at least during their long flourishing period, as is so often the case with the French, who too willingly made a little excursion into the opposite, and in fact endured spirit of logic only when it betrayed its sociable courtesy, its sociable self-renunciation by a multitude of such little excursions into its opposite. Logic appears to them as necessary as bread and water, but also like these as a kind of prison fare, as soon as it is to be taken pure and by itself. In good society one must never want to be in the right absolutely and solely, as all pure logic requires. Hence, a little dose of irrationality in all French esprit. The social sense of the Greeks was far less developed than that of the French in the present and the past, hence so little esprit in their cleverest men, hence so little wit, even in their wags, hence, alas! But people who do not readily believe these tenets of mine, and how much of the kind I still have on my soul. Est rest magna tacere, says Martial, like all garrulous people. 83. Translations. One can estimate the amount of the historical sense which an age possesses by the way in which it makes translations, and seeks to embody in itself past periods and literatures. The French of Corneille, and even the French of the Revolution, appropriated Roman antiquity in a manner for which we would no longer have the courage, owing to its superior historical sense. And Roman antiquity itself, how violently, and at the same time how naively did it lay hand on everything excellent and elevated belonging to the older Grecian antiquity! How they translated these writings into the Roman present! And how they wiped away intentional and unconcernedly the wing dust of the butterfly moment! It is thus that Horace now and then translated Alcaeus or Archilochus. It is thus that Propertius translated Callimachus and Philetas, poets of equal rank with Theocritus, if we be allowed to judge. But of what consequence was it to them that the actual creator experienced this and that, and had inscribed the indication thereof in his poem? As poets they were averse to the antiquarian, the inquisitive spirit which precedes the historical sense. As poets they did not respect those essentially personal traits or names, nor anything peculiar to city, coast, or century, such as its costume or mask, but at once put the present and the Roman in its place. They seem to us to ask, quote, should we not make the old new for ourselves, and adjust ourselves to it? Should we not be allowed to inspire this dead body with our soul? For it is dead indeed. How loathsome is everything dead! They did not know the pleasure of the historical sense, the past and the alien was painful to them, and as Romans it was an incitement to a Roman conquest. In fact, they conquered when they translated, not only in that they omitted the historical, no, they added also allusions to their present. Above all, they struck out the name of a poet and put their own in its place, not with the feeling of theft, but with the very best conscience of the Imperium Romanum. 84. The origin of poetry. The lovers of the fantastic in man, who at the same time represent the doctrine of instinctive morality, draw this conclusion: quote, "Granted that utility has been honoured at all times as the highest divinity, where then in all the world has poetry come from? This rhythmatising of speech which thwarts rather than furthers plainness of communication, and which nevertheless has sprung up everywhere on the earth and still springs up, as a mockery of all useful purpose. The wildly beautiful irrationality of poetry refutes you, ye utilitarians. The wish to get rid of utility in some way, that is precisely what has elevated man, that is what has inspired him to morality and art." Well, I must here speak for once to please the utilitarians. They are so seldom in the right that it is pitiful. In the old times, which called poetry into being, people still had utility in view with respect to it, and a very important utility. At the time when rhythm was introduced into speech, the force which arranges all the particles of the sentence anew, commands the choosing of the words, recolours the thoughts, and makes it more obscure, more foreign, and more distant. To be sure, a superstitious utility. It was intended that a human entreaty should be more profoundly impressed upon the gods by virtue of rhythm. After it had been observed that men could remember a verse better than in unmetrical speech, it was likewise thought that people could make themselves audible at greater distances by the rhythmical beat, and rhythmical prayer seemed to come nearer to the ear of the gods. Above all, however, people wanted to have the advantage of the elementary conquest which man experiences in himself when he hears music. Rhythm is a constraint, it produces an unconquerable desire to yield, to join in. Not only the step of the foot, but also the soul itself follows the measure. Probably the soul of the gods also, as people thought. They attempted therefore to constrain the gods by rhythm, and to exercise a power over them. They threw poetry around the gods like a magic noose. There was a still more wonderful idea, and it has perhaps operated most powerfully of all in the originating of poetry. Among the Pythagoreans it made its appearance as a philosophical doctrine, and as an artifice of teaching. But long before there were philosophers, music was acknowledged to possess the power of unburdening the emotions, of purifying the soul, of soothing the ferocia animi, and this was owing to the rhythmical element in music. When the proper tension and harmony of the soul were lost, a person had to dance to the measure of the singer. That was the recipe of this medical art. By means of it the Terpendia quieted the tumult, Empedocles calmed a maniac, Damon purged a love-sick youth. By means of it even the maddened revengeful gods were treated for the purpose of a cure. First of all, it was by driving the frenzy and wantonness of their emotions to the highest pitch, by making the furious mad, and the revengeful intoxicated with vengeance. All the orgiastic cults seek to discharge the ferocia of a deity all at once, and thus make an orgy, so that the deity may feel freer and quieter afterwards, and leave man in peace. Melios, according to its root, signified a soothing agency. not because the song is gentle itself,